Basically what we're going to talk about today is about generative AI. I have been given 10 minutes, so I've tried to squeeze in everything. And I just noticed that we have, different types of audience. We have academics and we have students as well. So I try to kind of like fit in everything, right? Okay, so what I'm going to talk about today is basically an ongoing project that we're working on, focusing on higher educations, looking into how to actually integrate generative AI into higher educations. Of course, at this stage is within our institutions itself. So for those who are not aware, I do not know what is generative AI, I'll give you a quick example, which is ChatGPT, right? So we say ChatGPT is actually an application of generative AI. And generative AI basically is different from the traditional AI, where traditional AIs, they focus on doing, for example, predictions, right? So I give you an image to the AI model, it will predict whether it's a dog or a cat, a male or female, for example. But generative AI, we focus on producing content. For example, you use ChatGPT to, let's say, for students, generate an essay for their assignment, right? Or we generate image, videos, and so on. Okay, so let's move back to our topic there, right? So basically, I always see South Asia as, not just a region, right? We see it as a crucible where immense skill meets unprecedented disruptions. So if we look into some of the statistics that we have, this one is back in 2019, where it says more than half of South Asian youth are not on track to have the education and skill necessary for employment in 2030, right? This is back in 2019, even before we have the technologies of generative AI. And the contradictions here is that it also says that South Asia has the largest youth labor force in the world, with nearly 100,000 young people entering the labor market each day. So the question now is how we can actually bridge the gap, right? We have youth which are not have skill enough, okay, to meet the labor market. And the challenge is even compound with the what we call as the boom of generative AI, right? So it makes the higher educations in general much more challenging. And we know that generative AI, just like any other tools or any other technologies, back then, people claim that, for example, when we have Microsoft Excel is going to replace accountant. We have, for example, internet. Internet changed the way that we live. And now we have generative AI, basically ChatGPT, and some others product, Google Gemini and so on. It basically changed the way that we work. And just like any other technologies, it has a pro and cons, right? There are some things that we can utilize, but also we need to use it with care. So if we look into some of the literature that we have, people are actually looking into this. How actually the role of generative AI and the pro and cons of generative AI within the context of higher education. Next. So what I'm going to share with you here is I'm going to highlight one pro, or one of the advantages of generative AI within the context of, from my past experience. So what we're currently doing here, for example, if you can see, can you scroll up a little bit? Is actually how we use generative AI. As you can see from the right-hand side there is how you can use generative AI to draft a rubric, assessment rubric, okay? So what we're doing here is whenever we create an assessment from the point of view of an educator, we need to make sure that we have certain Bloom taxonomy to comply. We need to comply with, within the context Malaysia will be the Malaysian qualification framework. So using generative AI, previously without this technology, is really challenging for us to draft this assessment rubric. So with the power of generative AI, we can easily use that. As you can see from that example, is we use Google Gemini Pro 2.5 to create or draft assessment rubric for us easily, given the requirements of the assessment that we need to have. Apart from that, this is, as you can see, one of the initiatives that we are doing within our within UNISA itself, our local university, where we always try to equip our lecturers with the knowledge of using generative AI in their teaching and learning process. And for that specifically is we teach them how to use, or we share with them how to use Google Notebook LM. That's another generative AI tools to speed up their teaching and learning. Right, next. But of course, as I said just now, it comes with some challenges, comes with some limitations. So as you can see, there are a lot of limitations on the current generative AI model. Okay, so for example, one of it is, let's say, let's talk about ChatGPT. And we know that ChatGPT came from OpenAI, which is a company in the US. So mainly, they are trained on Western data, right? So the AI model itself, they're trained on Western data. So will there be any bias if it's going to apply within the context, for example, South Asia? Is it possible for us to develop our own model as, for example, not only Malaysia, South Asia, work together to develop a model or AI model that suit our context? So this is a question, this is a thing that we can actually explore. Right, next. So based on the very quick advantages and disadvantages that I have talked about, so there are a few things that actually we can explore, we can look into. So the first is we need to ensure that all the higher education institute in South Asia, because today we are focusing on South Asia, are AI ready. Right? We are ready to embrace the technologies of AI. So how we can actually do that first is we need to develop AI literacy. So when we say we develop AI literacy, it's not only for the students itself, it's also for the educators as well. So not only the students need to know how to use AI in their learning process ethically, we also need to ensure that we as educators know how to use AI to try to make our, for example, learning much more interesting. So there are also a lot of tools currently, for example, on how AI can be used for personalized learning to cater the different needs of learners, for example. That will be the first. And if you look into this framework here, it's not that clear. This is one of the examples that we are currently working on, one of the projects that we're currently working on in our local institute, our local university, where we try to explore how we can integrate AI literacy in the teaching and learning of programming subject, because I'm from the background of computer science. So basically, we came up with a framework with 4 main components. We call it as IEEC, right? The first I stand for introduce. So we introduce to the students about AI, no matter what subject they are taking. So it can be they're taking programming. In this context, they're taking programming. So we introduce them to AI within the context of programming. Even now, we have something called AI-assisted programming. Means you are not writing programs from scratch. You are using AI technologies to help you in writing programming. So the same can be applied to other subjects, let's say English, right? So how AI can be used to help the learners in learning English, for example, is something that we can explore. And the second E is encourage. So we encourage them to integrate AI in their learning process. So for these specific subjects in my lab notes, I always ask them to use AI to help them. So for example, there will be a lab activities, I ask them to work on it themselves, and then I will ask them to put in the same questions into generative AI tools, ask them to compare the result between both of it. So from that process, actually, we try to train the students in terms of their critical thinking. They can compare the result between what they have done and what have been produced by the AI tools, right? So that will be one of the examples we encourage them. So we are not in the stand of, stopping them from using the AI tools. So we are going for the mood of kind of like encouragement. The third one is evaluation. It's something very challenging to do. So there's some research that talking about how to use or how to introduce AI-proof assessment, right? How we can actually create assessment that is AI-proof, that cannot be done by AI. So previously, for example, if we ask them to do a recording, video presentation, there's something that cannot be done by AI yet, right? So maybe in the next 5 to 10 years, this can be done. So we need to keep up to date with that. So IEE, and the final one is C, control. So control is we need to teach the students or share with students how to use AI ethically. So not about stopping them, we encourage them, but we need to have the control mechanism there. So for example, in my assessment as well, I will ask them to keep a list of the prompt they have used to complete their assessment. So I encourage them to use AI. So for example, ChatGPT, you can ask ChatGPT everything, but you need to keep the prompt, the question that you ask ChatGPT, and you need to share that with me. So actually there's features in ChatGPT that can allow us to do that. So with that, we can actually kind of like introduce or integrate AI into the teaching and learning process. So within my context here is specifically on programming subject. So of course, we open to any collaborations or anything that look into how these AI integrations or this framework can be applied to some other subjects. As I said, for example, teaching English. And of course, this lead to the second point, which is foster collaborative innovation. So we need to work together. It's not only Malaysia. As we say, we are focusing on South Asia. We can look into different institutions, different countries, how the same framework can be applied differently, whether it can be generalized or not. And finally, one of the things, of course, is not the role as educators, maybe it's more towards policymakers or the governments, thinking about how to invest in equitable infrastructure, and also think about, come up with the policy of using AI ethically in higher education. So talking about the equitable infrastructure, so actually, just like any other technologies, this will cause digital divide. So for example, now the simple model in ChatGPT, it costs $20 per month for subscriptions. And if you want to subscribe to the much more advanced model, it costs you $200. So if I'm a rich student, then I can go for, I can pay for a better model, right? Okay. So I think that's it. So for the final one, we have been talking about, AI. We have been talking about technologies. We have been talking about the policy, the framework itself. But the most important thing is about the people, right? So what we want to focus on is we want to embrace AI and empower people. Thank you very much.